What's going on, everybody? A lot of you probably don't know, but I used to play Mario Tennis Aces a bunch when it came out, and it's one of my favorite Mario sports games of all time. Back when I was in college, I even played in tournaments at my university gaming club. After playing Strikers Battle League for almost 2 months, I want to make a fair comparison video between the two games, particularly their reception at launch and the differences between the competitive play. Also, this is really funny, and I just noticed this while editing, but the footage from Mario Tennis Aces was from 4 years ago, and I'm wearing the same shirt. Okay, back to the video. To start off, the mechanics of Mario Tennis Aces are the reason I love it so much. The addition of zone shots, special shots, and zone meter make the game feel more like a fighting game than a tennis game. Unlike most Mario Tennis games like the predecessor Ultra Smash, there is a learning curve that feels like you're continuously improving. You can dodge with good timing to reach further on the court, you can slow down time to help counter smashes, and you can even win by knockout if your opponent breaks their racket. I think this game deserved a lot more love from Nintendo because just a little bit more support, they would have had a ton of people willing to play in tournaments. Other than one major flaw, which I'll talk about later, Aces had a great release. Similarly to Strikers, there was a ton of people playing and it was fun to go online and test our skills against people of similar skill levels. The online worked well enough to make an enjoyable experience, but sometimes you got some McDonald's Wi-Fi warriors. Plus, there was a dedicated single-player mode with actual story and minigames. The single-player still wasn't worth it, but at least it had something. Mario Strikers has absolutely no reason to play without multiplayer, whereas Aces had at least a little bit of reason. This isn't the only thing I value about the launch of Aces higher than Strikers, but it at least counts for something. What matters way more to the player base was the developer support for the game post-launch. Mario Tennis Aces offered a free character every single month, so players at least could expect to come back once in a while when a new season dropped to pick up a brand new character. This continued for 14 months, which doubled the roster of characters and stayed on a steady time schedule. This was a way better system than what Strikers is doing, where on the day of release, we got a single tweet saying, hey, there might be some DLC maybe, and then went dark for a whole month. Up to this point, we have only gotten 2 characters, a single balance patch, which did more harm than good, and a promise to release more characters by the end of 2022. In terms of post-launch content, I guess 2 characters in 2 months is the same pace, but Strikers feels way more scummy because they aren't giving a fair time schedule. We have no idea when new characters are going to drop or when there's going to be balance patches. It's not very sustainable for the player base to not have any idea when new content is coming. This is how Aces was able to hold a player base for much longer, even after the flaw I talked about earlier. You see, there were some characters that were absolutely busted on release, mostly Bowser Jr., and their presence was so threatening that a lot of players left right away. They accidentally made BJR's defensive range huge, so it was almost impossible to score against him. Strikers never had anything close to as bad as release Bowser Jr. and Mario Tennis Aces. However, there was a balance patch pretty shortly after the game released that pretty much fixed the issue, and a lot of players came back to playing. A nice active online community formed around the idea that even if you just jumped in once a month, you would still be able to find people who also played just to try out the new characters. Strikers only releasing with 10 characters was one of the biggest reasons people criticized the game, saying how the roster was too small. But I don't think they would have had as many complaints if Next Level Games or Nintendo had announced some similar regular updates. This is why Aces had a great release, because they used the idea of new character releases to encourage people to play the game, not as a means to hide the fact that the game isn't complete. Mario Golf Super Rush had a similar problem, honestly. It seems like Nintendo has gotten too comfortable with the idea of adding content after launch, that they aren't even planning out the content ahead of time. It feels like they're just phoning it in and releasing whenever it's ready, which doesn't make me too confident in the future of online play. This is mostly a criticism of Nintendo's policy on games and how it got spoiled by Splatoon. It's a shame that Strikers had to suffer from this bad mentality too. Though I will say, surprisingly, I jumped into Mario Tennis Aces last night around the same time I played Strikers, and I was even able to find 3 matches to finish the tournament. Although it was much slower than it was on release, it was a welcome surprise and it reminded me of how fun that game is. To sum up, Strikers isn't as bad as YouTubers will have you believe. The game is designed to just be a fun multiplayer game you can pick up with your friends and play online with people. But when you compare it to a similar game released early in the Switch lifecycle, it's obvious how Nintendo's approach to filler games has become spoiled by lazier methods of farming engagement online. That's all I have for today's video. Once again, I don't think this is a fault on Mario Strikers. I just think it's interesting to compare how Nintendo dealt with two similar games upon release. Honestly, I think Strikers is just as competitive as Aces was, and is definitely just as much fun to play. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.